The history of ancient Greece is a tale written by and about men. It's rare that we hear about women outside of being wives, sisters, or daughters. There's a reason for this. Women were largely excluded from Greek society, forced to stay in the home, raising kids and managing the household. And yet, some women beat the odds. In a society where most women went their entire lives without receiving an education, some defied the norm. These women tell a completely different story than what we usually hear from ancient authors. They were proof that a system designed to lock women away occasionally slipped up. These women used their educations to catapult themselves into philosophical stardom, shocking men of the era with their unwomanly intellect. Over the years, though many of their names have been erased in an attempt to make them fade into the background, a few have survived. Their stories refuse to be silenced. Now, just to be clear, these women were outliers. An overwhelming majority of young girls were not even allowed to leave the house, much less get any kind of education. Women were generally not given the same musicae and gymnasticae education as men. Instead, they were kept in the home, learning skills such as spinning, weaving, cooking, and cleaning that would one day help them take care of the house. Wealthy women were also taught how to manage household slaves, and it is possible that a very small group of the wealthiest women would have learned how to read, write, and do math. But even these skills were only meant to be used for household purposes. While we assume that girls were taught these skills by their mothers, they were legally under the care of their fathers alone. When they got married around the age of 15, responsibility for women was transferred over to their husbands. They were often not even seen as citizens, unable to participate in the government, and were instead just a part of a household unit. Still, some affluent men in society did believe that women had the right to be educated. Pythagoras, who essentially created a commune in southern Italy during the 6th century BCE, allowed many of the women in his community to become educated. Among them were his wife, Theano, his 3 daughters, Maia, Demo, and Arignode, and possibly even Plato's mother, Perictione. In fact, there is a historical trend that many men who received or offered higher levels of learning were more likely to support education for women. Our next example is a woman named Aspasia, who lived in Athens in the mid-5th century, during a time when many women were losing the few rights they did have. How then did Aspasia manage to become so well educated? Well, she was helped by having connections to some of the most powerful men in Athenian politics. Specifically, she dated a man named Pericles, who was almost 30 years older than her, but was one of the most powerful men in Athens. But Pericles was not Aspasia's only powerful connection. She was also friends with other influential philosophers, like Xenophon, Anaxagoras, Phidias, and even Socrates. In fact, Socrates admired Aspasia so much that their friendship was written about by other philosophers even after he died. Apparently, Socrates would bring his young students to ask Aspasia for advice in philosophy. It's entirely possible that Socrates would have brought a young Plato to learn from Aspasia. Plato himself grew up to be one of the most vocal supporters for women's education in his time. In Book 5 of his Republic, Plato portrays Socrates arguing on behalf of women's education, reasoning that if female dogs could be trained to do the same tasks as male dogs, why couldn't the same apply to humans? In Plato's idealized society, women received exactly the same education as men. Plato's advocacy for women's education wasn't just theoretical either. During the time that Plato led the academy, he taught at least 2 female students. The first was named Axiothea, who traveled to Athens to join the academy after reading Plato's Republic. She dressed as a man for a long time to avoid the criticisms of Athenian society, but her identity was eventually revealed. In the end, she chose to remain in Athens, even bringing on another female student named Lasthenia. In addition, though we don't know if Plato's student, Aristotle, ever taught a woman in his peripatetic school, his successor, Theophrastus, certainly did. a student named Pamphile, who we believe wrote at least 32 works. The trend of philosophic schools accepting female students continued when Epicurus opened his school, the Garden, to not only women but also slaves. In his school, everyone was considered to be equal, which incidentally helped feed the rumors that Epicureanism disregarded polite society in favor of pleasure. Still, there were apparently several female students of the Garden, including Nicodon, Hydia, Mamarion, and Leontion. The truth is that, though vastly outnumbered by male students, there were still plenty of women who attended ancient Greek philosophical schools. Some even rose through the ranks to lead these schools, such as Arete, who would lead the Sarionic school after her husband's passing. Still, although there were plenty of ancient female philosophers, they were constantly overshadowed by their male counterparts. There was one woman, however, who left a legacy so large that even mainstream historians cannot ignore it. It's time to talk about Hypatia. Before we do that though, I do have to warn you that we are jumping ahead like 600 years of history. By this time, Alexander the Great's Hellenic dynasty had been taken over by the Roman Empire, which eventually split into the western and eastern regions. The eastern region is today called the Byzantine Empire, after the original Greek name of its capital, Byzantium. Byzantium was then renamed to Constantinople and eventually to Istanbul, but that's more history than we have time for. Anyway, when Hypatia was born in the Byzantine Empire around 370 CE, her hometown of Alexandria was a feat of architecture and culture, a capital of knowledge with an impressive library. Her father, a mathematician and astronomer, likely taught Hypatia for most of her education, though even ancient sources agree that she very quickly surpassed him. Hypatia is known for teaching several well-known figures, including the civil ruler of Alexandria, Orestes, and not one but two men who would go on to become the Bishop of Ptolemais. She is most famous for teaching her students math and astronomy, but she also became the head of the Neoplatonic school of thought of Alexandria, a philosophy that was loosely based on the teachings of Plato from around 600 years before. Hypatia's impact on ancient education was so profound that she even made her way into Raphael's famous fresco, The School of Athens. Here she is, looking straight at the viewer, the only woman in a sea of men. Women in ancient Greece were never meant to be seen outside of the house, much less heard expressing an educated opinion. And yet, as we have seen across history, people will always find a way to learn. Becoming educated did not magically solve these women's problems. They were still not legal citizens in the eyes of the law, and they still had to answer to society's cruel criticisms. Still, I like to think that these women found some kind of acceptance in philosophical schools. It's a testament to their radicalness that these schools even tolerated women in the first place. History, much like society, can be unforgiving of people who step out of line. Over the centuries, the names, stories, and brilliant minds of these women have been intentionally forgotten, left out of history books and reduced to footnotes in the biographies of men. But whether we remember them or not, these women existed. We'll never know the full impact they had on their schools or on the history of education in general. But just remember, as you hear the stories of powerful men in ancient Greece, that there were always women there too.